The office was quiet that morning. Too quiet, maybe. The kind of quiet where you hear your own thoughts a little too clearly. I was sipping my coffee, lukewarm as usual, and listening to Anna, my assistant, ramble on about how her cat knocked over a lamp during a thunderstorm. It was the kind of chatter that kept mornings human. I nodded along, pretending to care, while I glanced over the schedule for the day. A few client calls, some internal reviews, and a team check-in before lunch. Just another Wednesday at Branson Tate. We weren't a powerhouse firm, not even close. But we were stable, loyal, familiar. Then the phone rang. Anna reached for it, but I waved her off. "I've got it." I saw the caller ID before I picked up. Lorraine. Her name alone set my teeth on edge. My half-sister. My father's golden child. Now, thanks to a fresh corporate shakeup, my boss, technically, barely. "Can you meet me in your office in 10? Her tone was clipped. No hi, no small talk. "Is something wrong? Just be ready." The line clicked off. I stared at the receiver a second longer than I should have, then placed it down slowly. Anna looked at me. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, standing. "Just Lorraine being Lorraine." I didn't mention the tightness in my chest. I didn't explain how my sister's voice always managed to twist something in me, no matter how many years passed. I didn't have time to unpack that. I had 10 minutes. She walked in like she owned the place. Lorraine had that kind of presence. You saw her and you knew someone in the room thought they were better than you. Sharp blazer, hair pulled back like a soldier reporting for battle. No greeting. "Shut the door," she said. I did. "I'll make this quick," she began, placing a folder on my desk like it was a live grenade. "Effective immediately. I need your entire team terminated. Full department reset." I blinked. "What?" "You heard me." I stared at her, trying to process. This team, my team, has been with me through layoffs, recessions, acquisitions. "Exactly," she cut in. "They've aged with the building, and it shows." "Lorraine," she raised a hand. "This isn't personal. It's corporate restructuring. Austin's performance is middling. HQ wants agility, not nostalgia." I knew that tone. I'd heard it since I was a teenager. The way she said words like nostalgia, like it was a disease I needed to be cured of. "They're not dead weight," I said, quieter. "Then why is Dallas outperforming you? Why is your turnover 0 while theirs evolves?" I didn't answer. She leaned in. "Don't make this harder than it is. You've always been sentimental. It's why you never outgrew this mid-tier station. Leadership demands evolution, not comfort." Her words landed like paper cuts. No blood, just slow-burning sting. I flashed back to summer nights at Dad's house, Lorraine getting the big slice of cake, the better bicycle, the front seat. Me getting silence. She wasn't cruel, not openly, just always first, always right. "You have until end of day," she said, standing. "Or I'll do it myself." I didn't follow her out. I didn't say goodbye. I just sat there, silently burning. I stayed in my office after she left, closed the blinds, let the hum of the building fill the space. My hands hovered over the keyboard, the HR system open in front of me. I thought of Marvin, quiet, deliberate Marvin, who once stayed till midnight fixing someone else's spreadsheet mistake just so our quarterly wouldn't tank. He never even told me. I found out a week later through Anna. I thought of Justine, single mom, fierce as hell, who juggled 2 kids and still nailed that Johnson audit. The one that saved our quarter last year, the same Justine I fought to get promoted because no one else would. They weren't numbers to me. They were people. They were the firm. I began typing the memo. "To all team members." Then I stopped, backspaced, tried again. My fingers shook. What the hell was I doing? Was my job just about clean spreadsheets and quarterly reports? Or was it about building something real? I closed the laptop, just shut it, and sat there, staring at my reflection in the black screen. Lorraine could frame this however she wanted, but this was personal. Instead of sending the termination notices, I opened a new email. Need to finalize a few performance reports, I wrote. Will proceed by EOD. I hit send before I could second guess. Then, slowly, I got up and made my way out onto the floor. I didn't say anything specific to anyone, just made rounds, asked about client follow-ups, software glitches, the coffee machine that Marvin swore was haunted. They smiled, unaware, but I was watching, looking for cracks. Seeing who was jittery, too quiet, too cheerful. Something wasn't right. And then, in the break room, I overheard it. I only mentioned it offhand to someone in Dallas. I didn't think it'd go all the way up. That voice. Adam. New hire. Lorraine's recommendation. I backed away before they noticed me. So that's how they did it. Lorraine hadn't just come for the team. She came for me. Undermining from the inside. Outside, in the parking lot, I paused beside my car. Caught sight of myself in the side mirror. A woman torn between two worlds. And in her eyes, a flicker of something unfamiliar. Anger. As I drove home, Lorraine's final words echoed in my head. If you can't do what needs to be done, someone else will. I gripped the steering wheel. The streetlight turned red. I stopped. Phone buzzed. Unknown number. She did this to the last guy too. Be careful. I stared at the screen. So this wasn't about performance after all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch, not because I was too tired to move, but because my bedroom felt too far away from the front door. I kept the lights on, not all of them, just the kitchen and hallway, but enough to make the place feel less like a box closing in. My phone was still on the coffee table, screen dark. The last message still glowed in my mind. She did this to the last guy too. Be careful. I didn't know who sent it. The number was blocked. No name, no trace. Just a sentence, dropped into my life like a match into gasoline. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders and stared at the ceiling. Was someone watching me? Did I say something to the wrong person? I replayed the entire day. Every conversation, every glance. Lorraine's voice echoed in my head. If you can't do what needs to be done, someone else will. I got up, walked to the window, and shut the blinds. Then I checked the door lock. Twice. Still unsettled, I grabbed my notebook and sat at the kitchen table. I opened to a fresh page and wrote across the top in block letters, "What she doesn't know." Underneath, I started listing names, people close to me, people close to Lorraine, people who might have known about Marcus Feldman. The silence in the apartment pressed in. I didn't like feeling afraid, but more than that, I didn't like not knowing. By the time I closed the notebook, my handwriting had turned jagged. I wasn't tired. I was alert, suspicious, on edge, and I wasn't backing down. I spent most of the next morning buried in our company archives. Officially, I told Anna I needed some quiet to prep for board updates. In truth, I was digging. I typed Marcus Feldman's name into every HR file system we had access to. Nothing came up. No termination notice, no departure memo, no emails archived under his name. It was like he never existed. Except I remembered him, and so did Marvin. I opened a secure chat, one we used when corporate started scanning messages for keywords after the last compliance scandal. I typed, "Do you remember Marcus F?" A pause. Then Marvin responded, "They erased him, like he never existed." I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure what to type next. I jumped over to LinkedIn. His profile had vanished. No mutuals. Not even a ghost record in old tags. All that remained were whispers. I leaned back in my chair, a cold ache in my stomach. Lorraine had done this before, and the company had helped her cover it up. 3 years ago, we'd had Thanksgiving at Mom's house. Lorraine showed up late but still managed to take over the conversation, like always. When I mentioned an audit error that had delayed a report, she laughed, loud, sharp, like it was a punchline. In her department? Of course, she probably left the calculator in the microwave. Everyone laughed. I didn't. I looked to Mom, expecting something. A frown. A defense. Anything. All she said, later, was, "You know how she is. Don't provoke her." That phrase had stuck with me for years. I used to think Mom meant it as protection. Now I wondered if it was just permission. Back in the present, I scribbled another note in my journal. Silence lets her win. I remembered reading a quote once, something that hit hard but felt obvious now. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou. I never forgot that line. And Lorraine, she'd been showing me for decades. I got to the office early the next day, earlier than usual. The hallway lights were still warming up, casting long shadows on the carpet. People filtered in quietly, like they were walking on eggshells. Justine stopped by my desk with a casual, "Morning," but her eyes lingered longer than usual. "You okay?" she asked, almost too softly. "Fine. Just busy." She hesitated, then nodded and walked off. I turned on my monitor and found a sticky note on the keyboard. Black ink, all caps, Marvin's handwriting. "Not all texts come from strangers." I didn't react outwardly. I just folded the note and slipped it into the back of my notebook, so someone on the team knew, or suspected, maybe more than one. I couldn't trust blindly, not anymore, but I wasn't alone, and I wasn't going to panic. Instead, I opened a blank Word doc and titled it, "Private, Do Not Share." First line, "Survive first, fight later." That evening, just after I finished microwaving a bowl of soup, another message buzzed through. "Marcus tried to fight her. That's why he's gone. Don't be next." Blocked again. I stood in the kitchen, spoon halfway to my mouth, staring at those words. Gone. Gone like he'd never been there at all. I set the bowl down, picked up my phone, and typed a reply. Too late, I already started. But I didn't send it. I looked at the screen, then at my reflection in the dark window above the sink. Hair pulled back, eyes wide but steady. Then I whispered, just loud enough to hear myself believe it. "Let's see who disappears this time." I called in sick. My email to HR cited a bad flu, unpredictable stomach issue, anything plausible enough. But instead of staying home, I headed downtown. My outdated admin badge still worked in some archive corridors. It was quiet in the building at that hour. Lights dim, most floors unused. I moved slowly, listening for footsteps, glancing at security cameras tucked in corners. I punched in a code for the records vault and slipped behind the door. The filing cabinets looked old, dusty. I pulled out drawers marked "Terminated Employees." I found folders for Marcus Feldman, Jenna K., Omar Diaz. Each had minimal data, a blank exit date, voluntary resignation stamped in red. No exit interviews, no farewell memos. Their emails were wiped. Their last days at the company were disappearing into thin air. I photocopied names and file numbers, made notes. When the door creaked behind me, I froze. A shadow slipped out, but I held still. No one accused me. I closed the drawer, heart drumming in my ears. I offloaded the scans to my phone, erased traces, and left. The building's hum enveloped me again, like nothing happened. Back at home, I set up a spreadsheet titled "Disappeared for a Reason." Column headers: name, last known date, department, notes. Marcus had zero trace. Jenna was removed 6 months after a project she owned. Omar's folder had a line, "Conflict with Lorraine Directive," scratched out. My pen hovered over the notes column. I typed, "Too clean." I cross-referenced with LinkedIn. Marcus's profile was gone. Jenna's vanished. Omar's incomplete. No one had continuity. A former analyst from a small branch responded to a blind message. "She doesn't fire. She erases. Walk away while you can." That was a warning, not a tip, but I took note. My mind flashed back to a coworker 2 years ago. She was ambitious, always raising her hand in meetings. Then, one day, she vanished. No resignation, no trace. I'd shrugged it off as burnout. A week later, she was gone from the directory. I'd even forgotten her name for a time. But now, as I stare at the empty entries before me, I can't unsee the pattern. I called Javier around 8 p.m. He answered first try, unexpected. He sounded cautious. "Lorraine's group requests manual email deletions regularly. HR doesn't even know about it." He said it quietly, as though speaking of something dangerous. Nobody does that unless they're hiding trails. I asked him to dig deeper. to find archives from 2 years ago, raw data, server logs, metadata. He hesitated, voice soft. That's a risk. They'll know. They always know. I didn't flinch. I said, this isn't corporate policy. It's destruction of lives. He agreed. He promised the file. Before midnight, I'd receive an encrypted drive in my inbox. Later, I drove out to my mother's place for dinner. Lorraine was already there, lively, carrying herself like nothing was wrong. She dropped jokes, asked after clients, everything staged. Mom asked innocently if I'd eaten. I said yes, quietly. During dinner, Lorraine said, "They say you're taking sick days for errands." She laughed, like that was casual. Mom made no comment. Lorraine added, "If you're going to lead, don't be so emotional." The silence that followed was thick. Maybe Mom heard the dig. Maybe she felt it. I raised my glass, not to drink, but to steady my hand. I said nothing. My reflection in the window caught my eyes, tired but alert. Afterward, I locked up, drove home. Across the city lights, I checked my phone. There it was. Deleted people.zip. File attached. It opened with exit reports redacted, HR logs, and one audio clip labeled Exit Interview 0625 Bond MP3. When I played it, a familiar voice cracked. This isn't about poor performance. She wants me out because I know too much. Static. Then a timestamp. 7:14 p.m. June 3rd. Lorraine's not just pruning. She's burying them. I arrived at HQ early that morning, earlier than usual. The kind of early where you hear the elevator hum and the lights still flicker to life as you pass under them. I needed time. I needed space. I needed control. When I stepped into the 10th floor conference room, Lorraine was already there. She stood by the speakerphone, her back to me, talking like she owned the building. Which, in some ways, she did. The call was already active, her voice echoing through the room, confident, clipped, deliberate. "I'm concerned about Austin's numbers. The team's lagging. Delara's leadership style might be too empathetic." That word stopped me cold. Empathetic? Since when was that a flaw? She turned when she noticed me. I gave her a polite nod, sat down, and opened my laptop. She moved to mute my mic, assuming I hadn't joined yet, but something glitched. I heard the soft click, but my little green light stayed on. And in that odd silence, her voice kept flowing, unaware I was listening. "She gets too close to her team, takes things personally. This will need correcting." I sat still, barely breathing. Another voice, male, on the line. "You're recommending replacement?" "She might do better elsewhere, something more hands-off." That's when I muted myself, not to hide, but to contain the storm rising in my chest. When the meeting officially began, I kept my tone flat, professional. Didn't flinch. Lorraine didn't seem to notice a thing. She smiled through the call. I stayed neutral, let her lead, let her play boss. The meeting ended with no fireworks, at least not for the room, but for me, something cracked. As the others filtered out, Lorraine lingered behind. She walked over casually, sipping her coffee. "You know tech these days, so many glitches. Crazy that your mic acted up, huh?" I met her eyes, quiet. She smiled again, the kind of smile that hides knives. "I just want what's best for the company," she said. "Sometimes that means knowing when to step back, gracefully." I said nothing, just watched her talk. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I waited, then asked, "Why would I be muted if nothing was wrong?" She paused for a second, a beat, then walked away. That night, after dinner and a long drive home, I opened the old files Javier sent. One folder stood out, buried deep under system backups, a title in Vietnamese, Gia Moi Cu. I clicked it. Inside were contract amendments, timestamps from 3 years back. One document labeled Initial Board Allotment, Delara N. It showed I had been granted board shares when I accepted the leadership position. But the next document, newer, cleaner, had my name replaced. Lorraine's trust now held those shares. The signatures, not mine. I checked against old HR forms I'd signed. The handwriting didn't match. The loop on the D was too tight. The pressure was wrong. And my hands trembled, but my eyes didn't blink. She planned this. From the beginning, I opened a draft to HR, typed every detail, attached screenshots. I hovered over send, then stopped. My mother would never understand. The board would circle the wagons. This wasn't just career suicide, it would be war. I closed the draft. Instead, I saved a backup on an encrypted drive. Hid it, made a second. Hid that one too. I locked my laptop, sat still. Then came the buzz. A calendar invite. From Lorraine. Subject. Private discussion. Time. 8 p.m. Location. Rooftop lounge, HQ building. I stared at the screen, then looked out the window at the rising dark. So, you want to talk in public? I whispered. Fine by me. The air felt thicker the moment I stepped onto the rooftop. Not from the weather. It was cool, breezy, typical Austin evening. But from the weight of what I was walking into. The rooftop lounge was dressed like it belonged to a different city. Soft jazz piping through discreet speakers, dimmed hanging bulbs strung overhead, and overpriced wine already poured into 2 elegant glasses. Lorraine sat with her legs crossed, phone face down, posture rehearsed. She smiled like this was a casual meetup between sisters who happened to work together, not the start of a Cold War. "Delara," she said, lifting her glass as I approached. "You look ready." I didn't smile back. I took the seat across from her, careful not to turn my back to the elevator. "I figured you'd prefer something more refined for our little conversation," she went on, motioning to the surroundings. "No walls, no microphones, just us." I took a slow sip. Dry Cabernet. Expensive. Bitter. She kept talking, dancing around the real subject. Loyalty is a funny thing, isn't it? People say it's earned, but more often than not, it's bought. Or forced. I stayed quiet. Let her fill the silence. She leaned in slightly. "I've always admired your composure, even now with all the rumors, digging, the noise." I knew then this wasn't a talk. It was a performance. Hers. Her smile faded. "You've been poking around places you shouldn't. Old files, old names, even calling in old favors." She paused, watched me. "HR owes me more than a few, and your encrypted files, not as locked as you think. Poor Javier, he's been careless." She pulled something from her folder and slid it across the table. A printed transcript. My conversation with Marvin. Private, encrypted, supposed to be safe. I didn't blink. She said, "There's always someone watching. That's how real leaders stay in power." The transcript was edited. I noticed it immediately. Entire sections missing, tone altered. A conversation bent into a confession. "You're walking a dangerous line," she said softly, "and I'm giving you the option to step back. Walk away with your name still intact. Or keep going and lose everything. And maybe everyone." She tilted her head like it was a gentle offer, like she was doing me a kindness. I picked up the transcript, read a few lines, then placed it back on the table. "You call this leadership?" I said calmly. "Spying, lying, threatening?" Her lips twitched. "Leadership is knowing where the edge is and who can be pushed over it." I leaned in. "You've confused silence for weakness. That's your first mistake." She blinked once. That's all I needed. I finished my wine, set the glass down without a sound, got up and walked away first. No drama, no storming off, just clarity. I drove home with the windows down. No music, just air and thought. When I got back, I didn't change clothes. I sat at my desk and hit record. "She made it clear tonight," I said into the mic. "This isn't strategy anymore. It's war." I reviewed the transcript. It was crafted, meant to frame. I could see the setup now, the pieces, the angle. I started organizing files, locking backups, making hard copies, and storing them off-site. Then I opened my secure folder, created a new document, title, Contingency Plan A. As I saved it, my screen flashed. A new notification. Internal complaint filed against me, anonymous. Creating a hostile work environment. I leaned back, eyes on the screen, and whispered, "So this is how you want to play it." By sunrise, I was no longer fighting for my team. I was fighting for my name. The complaint Lorraine planted had already started to ripple through the office. HR sent a neutral inquiry, pretending it was routine. I didn't wait for them. I walked straight into the HR and IT wing before most people clocked in. Javier right behind me, his badge swinging nervously. "Morning," I said flatly to Thad, the compliance officer. "I want access to all file logs and record revisions. 2 years back." He looked like I'd just asked him for state secrets. "That's sensitive, Delara. We'd need clearance." "From who?" He hesitated. Then, quietly, "Orders from Lorraine." I felt my jaw tighten. "So I'm not allowed to see what was done under my own name?" The silence answered for him. Javier shifted beside me, anxious. After a long pause, Thad finally handed over a thin stack of paper. "This is all we could provide." The logs were clean, too clean. Dates missing, activity columns shortened, but one line caught my eye. "File swapped by J. Vaughn." That was Javier's tag. I turned to him. "Did you touch these?" He shook his head fast. "Not since we backed them up for you." That meant someone had forged it, used his digital ID to bury the edits. The sting of betrayal mixed with nausea. I looked up at Thad. "You scrubbed the records, all of you." He didn't meet my eyes. I gathered the papers, thanked him with a voice that didn't sound like mine, and walked out. In the hallway, Javier muttered, "They're cutting you off. You can't win this inside." "Maybe not inside," I said, "but there's always a way around." We went to a small side lab, one of the older archive rooms the company barely used anymore. The smell of dust and old plastic clung to everything. Javier hooked up his laptop to the internal network through a backdoor tunnel. He found what I needed, an archived award file. "This one's untouched," he said. I opened it, a trophy design, the company's annual Award of Excellence. The metadata showed my department had submitted it. The inscription read, "For outstanding leadership, Delara N." I scrolled to the newer version. The name was gone, replaced by Lorraine's department. Buried deep inside the folder was a hidden image file, a scan of the original plaque before alteration. I opened it, and there it was, my team's names, my signature at the bottom. She hadn't just stolen credit, she'd rewritten history. Humiliation burned like acid, but anger steadied my hands. I clicked to download the file. Midway through the transfer, the screen flashed red. "Access denied." Another flash. "Permissions updated. Viewer only." Then, one by one, my folders vanished. The cursor blinked over an empty window. "Javier?" I said quietly. He leaned over. "They revoked your credentials." I stared at the screen, my own work dissolving before my eyes. "They're trying to erase me," he swallowed. "They already started." For a long minute I didn't move. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and said, "We're not done." We headed to the basement archives, my refuge, my last corner of the company untouched by Lorraine's fingerprints. Down there, the hum of old servers filled the silence. I plugged in 2 USB drives, one after another, copying whatever fragments still remained. Javier mirrored the files to an off-site server. When the last progress bar reached 100%, I hit record on my phone. "If they lock me out," I said softly, "I'll keep fighting from beyond the walls." The fear that had followed me for weeks began to harden into something sharper. Resolve. By the time we left the basement, the building was waking up. Coffee machines hissed, voices rose, the world pretending everything was fine. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert. "All hands meeting, 10 a.m. tomorrow, temperatures will rise." Lorraine's phrasing, no doubt. I looked up at the flickering lights overhead and exhaled. "They want to corner me," I whispered. "Good. I'm ready to fight." I entered the office just after dawn, the hallways oddly hushed. The usual hum of co-workers trickling in was gone. Instead, crisp white notices had appeared overnight on every bulletin board and glass door. Position not renewed. Access revoked. Exit at HR. No names, no signatures, just finality. By mid-morning, the fallout was clear. Marvin appeared at my door with wide eyes, camera bag over his shoulder. Justine stood near the printer, clutching a box of her personal things. Others hovered in clusters, whispering. They locked me out, one said. Another. My email disappeared. The purge was real, and it was ruthless. Loyal team members I had trusted, elevated, defended, now packing up. Their faces, shock-stricken, their hands trembling. The guilt hit me like cold water. I had led them into the arena. I steadied my voice. We're not done yet. Do not sign anything. Do not delete a message. Do not uninstall one file. They blinked, silent but listening. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. By noon, anonymous emails had landed in every inbox. Claims I leaked internal reports, accusations I misused project funds, charges that I manipulated client data. HR staff glanced at me warily, some with pity in their eyes, others with dread. I heard whispers. She betrayed us. Or worse, she's dangerous. A notification popped on my phone. From an unknown sender. This ends tonight. I didn't respond. I kept working, sending calm reassurances to my team. They weren't alone. Silence was strategic. Truth would surface. At noon, I strode into HR's reception area, passing stunned faces. I didn't wait for an invite. I pushed open Thad's office door. Calix, the in-house counsel, was there, phone in hand. Who signed those terminations? And who sent those rumor emails? I asked, voice low but firm. Thad stuttered. Miss N. The board's orders. I shook my head. Board orders or fabrications? Metadata shows origin floors, not boardrooms, Calix leaned forward. We only follow orders. Orders built on lies aren't orders, I said softly, then tapped my phone to record. They froze. Thad looked away. By afternoon, the company-wide announcement was in full swing. The auditorium was packed. Lorraine stood on stage behind the podium, flanked by board members. She cleared her throat. In recent days, we uncovered breaches in internal protocol, confidential leaks, and insubordination masked as leadership. We are obligated to act decisively, to preserve integrity. Her tone was clinical, justifications sound bites. She paced like a prosecutor laying out a case. Leadership is not avoiding hard choices, she said, fingers tapping the lectern. This reorganization wasn't personal. It was necessary. They turned to me. I stood. I held my breath. I asked to speak. The mic clicked. Silence. The auditorium hush deepened. For years you framed loyalty as weakness, I began. You accuse me of leaks while your fingerprints trace back to every manipulation you've made. I tapped a device in my hand. The screen behind her flipped, revealing an email thread with metadata linking sources back to her domain. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Faces shifted. She cut in quickly. You are off script, Delara. But you rewrote the script years ago, I said softly. Don't pretend you control what you cannot contain. Before she could retort, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. The intercom announced a lockdown. Security protocols enabled. Please remain in position. Do not approach exits. The timing was brutal. The doors locked just as truth gained traction. I looked sideways at Lorraine. Her facade didn't crack, but her eyes flickered. I gripped the mic, my voice low but clear. So you lock the doors when truth speaks loudest? She said nothing. The silence lasted. In that moment, I understood the walls weren't just closing in. They were built around me. The auditorium was packed, more than I expected. Employees, board members, local media filling every seat. I felt their eyes on me as Lorraine stepped onto the stage, calm and composed. Her voice opened the session. Talk of restructuring, integrity, liabilities needing to be removed. She framed it like a medical procedure, cold, clinical. My name floated in her speech as the pivot point. When my turn came, I rose, mic in hand. I started slow. Did you really believe I would step down quietly? The audience hushed. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. She said, Your team has outgrown you. We don't need you anymore. That line stung like betrayal. It painted me as obsolete in front of everyone. But I swallowed that hurt and replied with facts, metrics, stories of how my team delivered when others would have folded. She tried to cut in, claiming I'd betrayed trust. I let her. My voice stayed steady. Then I hit play on the video my team made. Our thank you message. Silence. The screen blanked. The version that played was her manipulated one, not ours. I called it out. The crowd shifted. Confusion flickered. She tried to regain control. I countered by pulling up the encrypted file Javier gave me. Suppression logs, timestamps, metadata tying edits to her domain. Faces in the room changed, from supportive to stunned. The board stepped forward to buffer Lorraine's assault. Security moved in, but their presence couldn't stop the truth. Then an alert flashed. Criminal complaint filed. Investigators en route. The room froze. Lorraine's poise cracked. I leaned in, voice low. So who's next to answer for the truth? The sirens had long faded, but their echo lingered in my body like static. A week had passed since the storm at headquarters, but the air still carried traces of what had happened. Lorraine had been placed on indefinite leave. The board moved fast, faster than anyone expected. I got a call that morning, unanimous vote. They wanted me back. It wasn't celebration that hit me first. It was stillness. After months of chaos, I stood in the middle of downtown, coffee in hand, watching people walk past. Some nodded, some smiled. Not like before. Not forced, not hesitant. Something had shifted. Not just in them, but in me. Later that morning, I met Javier at our usual spot. Just two friends and a worn-out table. We didn't talk business. We talked about breath, about what it costs to carry pressure alone. I told him I was scared, not of the fight, but of what I'd lost while winning it. He just nodded and said, "Courage is fear that has said its prayers." That line, it stayed with me. He asked what came next. I said, "Whatever it is, it's going to be built different." And I meant it. For the first time in months, I laughed. Not the performative kind, a real one. A few days later, I was invited to speak at a local community event. Nothing big, just folding chairs and a mic on a park stage. I didn't prepare a speech. I talked about people, about what happens when we forget that the ones beside us are carrying things we can't see. I said, "People aren't liabilities when you choose to know them." They clapped. Not because they were told to, but because something clicked. That was enough for me. I didn't mention Lorraine by name. I didn't need to. Still, the news came out. Formal charges, ethics violations, breach of internal conduct. Her social media went dark. Rumors said she moved out of town. Then one day, tucked inside my locker, was a small envelope. No return name, just a typed note. "Maybe you were right." I stared at it a long time, thought about responding, but some endings, they just stay endings. Back at the office, things weren't flashy. They were quiet, new hires, open conversations. The energy was different, not buzzing, just steady. I walked past the old whiteboard near the break room. My team had filled it with notes, inside jokes, half-sketched ideas. But one stood out, written in thick black marker. "Thank you for fighting when we couldn't." I stood there longer than I should have. Then I whispered to myself, "You don't always win by being loud. Sometimes surviving with dignity is the loudest win of all." As I left the building, sunlight warming my back, I didn't feel like someone who survived something. I felt like someone finally free to build something new. My pace slowed. And just like that, I remembered, silence is only golden when it's not used to hide the truth.